They're the leaders and the legends that are part of the biggest moments. Since the 1970s, Red Rangers have been fighting against evil and posing in the middle of the team on both Super Sentai and Power Rangers. And today we're going to look at every Red Ranger ever, including the main team leaders and even some special temporary Red Rangers. So sit back and relax. This is the complete history of Red Rangers.
Akarenger!
First, we're going to talk about the OG that started it all, Tsuyoki Kaijo, better known as Akarenger, from Goranger, Super Sentai's very first season. Tsuyoshi was a member of a group called Eagle, and the younger brother of his branch's commanding officer. When the Black Cross Army launched simultaneous attacks against Eagle's Japanese bases, Tsuyoshi survived the destruction of the Kanto branch while his brother and the other members were killed. Then, Tsuyoshi and the 4 survivors from the other branches were gathered together to form the Gorangers, and he became their leader. Akarenger was the trailblazer that established what a Red Ranger was supposed to be. He's calm, cool, and collected, serving as the team's commander and strategist. He's highly skilled in hand-to-hand combat and marksmanship. He's become iconic over the years, being featured in a lot of crossovers and films. He was a stoic leader that was the perfect hero to kick off Super Sentai. Next up is Goro Sakurai, who transforms into Spade Ace from Jaka. Goro was a world-class athlete and a master of several different fighting styles, like karate and judo. Plus, he was skilled at archery and riding horses. Because of his incredible physical ability, he was recruited to join Jaka, a special cyborg task force created to fight the criminal organization known as Crime. At first, Goro actually turned the offer down, but after seeing the threat that Crime possessed firsthand, he agreed to undergo cybernetic enhancement and became Spade Ace. Compared to Akarenger, Spade Ace took the Red Ranger archetype in a much more sci-fi direction. Unlike his predecessor, who was more of a traditional soldier and field commander, Goro is basically a super athlete turned cyborg hero. His body's enhanced with atomic energy, giving him abilities like super speed, X-ray vision, and powerful combat skills. As the leader of Jaka, Spade Ace is still calm, serious, and heroic, but he feels more like a government-engineered weapon than the classic colorful team leader that Akarenger was. He pushed the boundaries of what a Red Ranger could be, and helped define the role in the early years of Sentai. Next up is Masao Den, who became Battle Japan from Battle Fever J. Masao was a former officer of the National Defense Ministry, and he was chosen to lead the Battle Fever team in their fight against the secret society known as Egos. Unlike the Go Rangers or Jaka, Battle Fever J was built around an international theme, with each member representing a different country or culture, and naturally, Masao represented Japan. Battle Japan was the leader of the team once again, but he also brought a different flavor to the role. Where Akarenger was a serious military-style commander and Spade Ace was a cyborg super athlete, Battle Japan was a disciplined martial artist. He was especially skilled in judo and karate, and even his roll call leaned into a martial arts-inspired style. Battle Japan carried the Red Ranger archetype into one of the most important transition points in Sentai history. His season helped shape what Super Sentai would become. He was still the calm, capable leader of the team, but now the Red Ranger was at the center of a show that was starting to look much closer to the Sentai formula that we recognize today. Next up is Ippei Akagi, better known as Denji Red from Denjiman. Ippei was a martial artist and karate instructor, but his life changed when the Vader clan, an evil force from another dimension, began targeting Earth. Thousands of years earlier, the Vader clan had destroyed the planet Denji, and in the present day, the Denji dog IC awakened to gather 5 people who could become the Denjimen. Ippei was chosen as the team's Red Ranger and became their leader in the fight to protect Earth. Denji Red continued the early tradition of Red being the strong, disciplined leader, but he also helped move the archetype into a slightly more modern Sentai formula. Instead of being a soldier like Akarenger or a cyborg like Spade Ace, Ippei was a civilian martial artist who was chosen for something bigger. He was calm, capable, and physically skilled, but he also had a classic heroic quality, where he felt like someone who could lead the team and also serve as a role model. Ippei might not be the flashiest Red Ranger, but he was an important evolution of the role. He kept the serious leader energy of the early Reds, but his concept as an everyman gave him a lot of vulnerability that made him an empathetic character that fans could root for. Next we look at Yusuke Owashi, the first Vol Eagle, from Sun Vulcan. Yusuke was an officer in the Guardians of World Peace Air Force and one of the top pilots in the organization. When the Machine Empire Black Magma became a threat to the world, Sun Vulcan was formed, with Yusuke chosen to represent the sky, becoming Vol Eagle and serving as the original leader of the team. Sun Vulcan was a wildly different kind of Sentai team. Instead of 5 members, this team only had 3, and they were all male. So Yusuke was the leader of one of the most unusual core teams in the entire franchise. As a Red Ranger, Yusuke continued the early Showa-era pattern of Reds being disciplined, serious, and professional. He was a trained military-style hero with experience in aviation, which fit perfectly with the Eagle theme. He was also the first Red Ranger to be replaced during the same season. Partway through Sun Vulcan, Yusuke leaves the team to pursue space shuttle research with NASA in the United States, passing the Vol Eagle mantle to Takayuki Hiba. Takayuki was a colleague of the original Vol Eagle, and he was a master of Kendo. After Yusuke went to the United States, Takayuki stepped in to take his place, becoming the new Vol Eagle and continuing the fight against Black Magma. As a character, Takayuki brought a slightly different energy to Vol Eagle. Where Yusuke was more connected to aviation and the sky, Takayuki was an expert in sword-based martial arts. His Kendo background separated him from the first Vol Eagle instead of just making him feel like the same character with a new actor plugged in. The second Vol Eagle was one of the earliest examples of a Ranger's power being inherited. That idea became much more common later on in both Super Sentai and Power Rangers, with different characters replacing previous Rangers or acquiring existing powers. But all the way back in Sun Vulcan, Takayuki showed that Red could be a symbol, a position on the team, and a responsibility that someone else could step into when it was needed. Next up is Kenichi Akama, who transforms into Goggle Red from Goggle 5. He was a world-class explorer and mountain climber, which already gave him the kind of courage, endurance, and survival instincts that you'd want from a Sentai leader. His path to becoming Goggle Red began when he saved Dr. Hideki Hongo, the founder of the Future Science Laboratory, from an attack by the Dark Science Empire Death Dark. After seeing the danger that Death Dark posed on the world, Kenichi was recruited as one of the 5 members of Goggle 5, becoming the team's Red Ranger and leader. Goggle Red continued the early tradition of Red being calm, capable, and heroic, but he also brought a more adventurous tone to the role. He wasn't a soldier, a cyborg, or a government officer. He was an explorer, which gave him more of an action-adventure vibe compared to the Reds before him. His skills as a mountain climber and survivalist made him feel like someone who was already used to danger before he ever put on the suit. Goggle Red arrived at a point where Sentai was continuing to refine its formula. Goggle 5 still had strong sci-fi elements, but it also leaned into a theme of ancient civilizations. Even though he still fit into the serious leader mold of the early Reds, Goggle Red showed that Sentai was getting more experimental with team themes, weapons, and visual identity. Historically, Kenichi may not be the most talked about Red Ranger, but he represented another important step in the franchise figuring out what a Sentai leader could be. He carried the same energy of leadership and reliability as the Reds before him, while adding a unique flavor to the archetype. Next up is Hokuto Dan, better known as Dyna Red from Dynaman. Hokuto was a kendo master from Hokkaido, and unlike some of the military-style Reds before him, he was also an inventor with a dream of creating an engine that didn't cause pollution. When the Jashinka Empire rose from the underground and began attacking the surface world, 5 inventors were gathered together to form Dynaman, with Hokuto becoming Dyna Red and leading the team into battle. Much like the Red Rangers that came before him, Hokuto was a strong, reliable leader, but he also brought a more explosive, high-energy style to the role, which made him feel a little more dynamic than some of the earlier Reds. Dynaman pushed Super Sentai further into the fast, colorful, action-heavy style that the franchise would become known for. The season had a stronger emphasis on explosions, martial arts action, and high-energy team combat, and Hokuto fit that tone perfectly. He was still serious and heroic, but there was more fire to him than the earlier Showa Red Rangers. Next, we're going to look at Shiro Go, who becomes Red 1 from Bioman. Shiro was a former Japanese space shuttle pilot, and he was one of the 5 descendants of people who had been showered with bioparticles hundreds of years earlier. When the Neo-Empire Gear attacked Earth, 5 descendants of these people were brought together to form the Bioman team, with Shiro becoming Red 1 and serving as their leader. Red 1 was another serious and capable commander, but he also brought a fresh sci-fi hero energy to the role. He wasn't just a martial artist or a soldier, he was a space shuttle pilot, which instantly made him feel more advanced, futuristic, and tied to the bigger scientific mythology of the season. He was disciplined, focused, and sometimes stern, but he also had a strong sense of responsibility that made him feel like the natural leader of the team. One of Shiro's more unique traits is that the bioparticles inside him allow him to understand animals, which gives him a slightly different connection to the world around him. Historically, Red 1 stood at the center of one of the more important early Sentai seasons, since Bioman helped push the franchise further into sci-fi storytelling. While Red 1 still fit the classic Showa-era mold of the calm, heroic leader type, he also felt like a step forward, since he was the leader of a season that made Super Sentai feel more modern, more dramatic, and more willing to experiment with the team formula. Next up is Hiryu Tsurugi, who transforms into Changed Dragon from Changeman. Hiryu was a former officer in the Japanese Air Force, and he was chosen by the Earth Defense Force to become part of a special team created to fight the Great Star League Gozma. During Gozma's attack on Earth, Hiryu and the other future Changemen were empowered by a mysterious energy known as the Earth Force, which gave them the power of legendary creatures. For Hiryu, that power was the dragon, making him Changed Dragon and the leader of Changeman. Changed Dragon continues the early Red Ranger tradition of being a disciplined military-style leader, but he also brought a more passionate and mythic energy to the role. He's not just a trained fighter or an officer, he's a hero powered by the Earth itself, with his Red Ranger identity tied to one of the most iconic creatures in fantasy. That dragon motif immediately gives him a stronger symbolic presence than a lot of the Reds before him. As a character, Hiryu is brave, determined, and kind-hearted, but he can also become so focused on the mission that he throws himself into danger without always thinking it through. He's a skilled marksman, and he even brings some of his baseball background into his fighting style. That gives him a little more personality than just being the serious leader. Historically, Changeman helped push Sentai towards bigger mythology and a stronger visual identity. The team was tied to legendary creatures and the spiritual power of the Earth itself, so Changed Dragon feels like another step forward in the Red Ranger evolution. Still a strong commander, but now with a bigger, more iconic heroic image built around him. Next up is Jin, who becomes Red Flash from Flashman. Jin was kidnapped from Earth when he was 3 years old and taken away by an alien hunter. After that, he was raised in the Flash star system. Years later, he returned to Earth to fight the reconstructive experiment Empire mess, with Jin becoming Red Flash and serving as the leader of Flashman. Jin brought a tragic vibe to the Red Ranger archetype. He was taken from Earth, raised in space, and then forced to return to a homeworld he barely remembered. So he had a much deeper emotional premise than the Reds before him. Jin was strong, intelligent, and disciplined, but there was also a side to him that was deep and reflective. Because he grew up on Flash Star, he developed a strong understanding of science, along with mental abilities that make him feel more cerebral than the average Red Ranger. He still has the courage and leadership that you'd expect from a Sentai Red, but he isn't just the guy charging into battle. He was definitely one of the more intelligent early Red Rangers. Jin's story is built around abduction, lost identity, and the search for his true home. That makes him feel like a bridge between the classic Showa-era leaders and the more emotionally driven Reds that would become common later on. Next up is Takeru, better known as Red Mask from Maskman. Takeru was a karate expert and race car driver who was recruited by Commander Sugata to become part of the Maskman team. Takeru falls in love with a mysterious woman named Mio, not knowing that she's actually Princess Lal from Underground Empire Tube. When Tube began its attack on the surface world, Takeru became Red Mask and led the Maskman into battle, while also trying to find and rescue the woman he loves. Red Mask was still a strong leader, but he brought a much more emotional angle to the role. A lot of his story was driven by his love for Mio, and that gave him a personal connection to the enemy. He isn't just fighting Tube because they threaten the Earth, he's also fighting because the woman he loves is trapped in the middle of that conflict. His strength came from his discipline, his training, his emotion, and inner strength. That gave him a different kind of style from the Reds that came before. Historically, Red Mask felt like another major step towards the more dramatic Red Rangers of the late Showa and early Heisei eras. He was driven by love, personal loss, and strong emotional stakes. Next up is Yusuke Amemiya, who transforms into Red Falcon from Live Man. Yusuke was a student at Academia Island, an elite school for young geniuses from around the world. He was brave, clever, athletic, and had the heart of a hero. Alongside his friends, he worked on powered suits originally designed for space exploration. But when 3 of their classmates betrayed Academia and joined the evil organization Volt, 2 of his friends were killed, and Academia Island was devastated. Several students from his friend group survived the attack and used the suits they had created to become Live Man, with Yusuke becoming Red Falcon and leading the team against Volt. Red Falcon is one of the more emotionally charged Reds of the Showa era, with a deeply personal story. He isn't just battling some random evil empire, he's fighting against former friends and people who turn their backs on everything that Academia was supposed to stand for. That gives Yusuke a lot more anger and emotional weight than some of the earlier Red Rangers. As a character, Yusuke starts off hot-headed and sarcastic, but he grows into a much more dependable leader as the war against Volt goes on. He's brave, loyal, and willing to carry the emotional burden of the team. Red Falcon felt like an early version of the more dramatic and character-driven Red Rangers that would become common later. He was still courageous with strong leadership, but his leadership was built around grief, betrayal, friendship, and revenge. Next up is Riki Honu, better known as Red Turbo from Turbo Ranger. Riki was a high school baseball player and one of 5 students chosen by Dr. Dazai and the fairy Ceylon to fight the Boma tribes. Riki became Red Turbo, serving as the leader of the team, while also trying to balance being a hero and a regular student. A lot of the Reds before him were soldiers, martial artists, pilots, scientists, or people with professional backgrounds, but Riki was pretty normal. He was athletic, passionate, and brave, but also a teenager who was still trying to figure things out. That makes him feel really relatable as a character. Red Turbo was a big shift from the earlier Red Rangers, since he was a teenager that struggled with everyday life. That led to more varied and interesting backstories for Red Rangers in the future. Next up is Gaku Hoshikawa, who transforms into 5 Red from 5 Man. Gaku was the oldest of the 5 Hoshikawa siblings who originally lived with their parents on the planet Sidon. But when the Galactic Imperial Army Zone attacked the planet, Gaku and his younger siblings were separated from their parents and sent back to Earth, where they were raised by the robot Arthur G6. Years later, the 5 siblings became teachers at Newtown Elementary School, with Gaku working as a science teacher. But when Zone finally turned its attention toward Earth, the Hoshikawa siblings used the technology they had developed to become 5 Man, with Gaku becoming 5 Red and leading the team. 5 Red brought a strong family dynamic to the Red Ranger role. He was calm and serious, which makes sense because he was the oldest brother and basically the parental figure for his younger siblings. Because their parents were gone for most of their lives, Gaku had to grow up fast, and that gives him a different kind of responsibility compared to the Reds before him. He has the classic Red Ranger leadership qualities, but they come from family responsibility more than military rank or natural charisma. He was leading his family into battle, giving him a unique place in the Red Ranger timeline. He was the big brother, the caretaker, and the emotional anchor holding the entire team together. Next up is Ryu Tendo, better known as Red Hawk from Jetman. Ryu was an officer in Skyforce, a defensive organization created to protect Earth. He was selected for the J Project, an experiment designed to give elite officers superhuman abilities through a special energy called Birdonic Waves. Ryu was successfully exposed to Birdonic Waves, making him the first Jetman. But before the rest of the team could be created, the Earth ship was attacked by Vyram, and Ryu's fiancé was seemingly killed in the chaos. After escaping, Ryu returned to Earth and helped gather the 4 civilians who had accidentally been hit by the remaining Birdonic Waves, forming Jetman. Red Hawk is one of the most important Reds of the early 90s due to how loved Jetman is, plus the drama and maturity he brought to the role. His discipline is constantly being tested by grief, trauma, and emotional conflict. He wants to be the perfect soldier, he wants to stay professional, but he's continuously put into situations where his personal feelings are impossible to ignore. His fiancée eventually returned as Maria, one of the main villains of the season. That gives Ryu one of the strongest personal connections to the enemy that any Red Ranger had up to that point. He isn't just fighting to save the world, he's fighting against the person he once loved, while still hoping some part of her can be saved. He eventually married Kaori, or White Swan. Jetman was one of the most character-driven Sentai seasons ever made, and Yu sits right at the center of that. He was conflicted and emotionally complicated, while still carrying the responsibility of being the Red Ranger. Next up is Geki, who transforms into Tyranno Ranger, from Zyuranger. Geki was the prince of the Yamato tribe and one of 5 ancient warriors placed into suspended animation after a battle against the witch Bandora. When Bandora returned in the modern day, Geki and the other Zyurangers were awakened to defend the Earth, with Geki becoming Tyranno Ranger and leading the team into battle. Tyranno Ranger is a huge turning point in Red Ranger history because this is where the archetype starts to become much more familiar to Western fans. Before Power Rangers ever existed, Geki was already the dinosaur-themed Red Ranger leading a team of ancient warriors, and his suit would eventually be used by the original Mighty Morphin Red Ranger. Geki was serious, heroic, and driven by a strong sense of justice, but his story also had a major family tragedy built into it. He eventually learns that Burai, the Dragon Ranger, is actually his older brother, which gives him one of the most memorable story arcs in the entire franchise. Their relationship adds a lot of emotional weight to the season. Historically, Tyranno Ranger is one of the most important Red Rangers ever. Zyuranger was a huge turning point for the franchise, and he became a bridge between Super Sentai and the beginning of Power Rangers.
Hi, I'm Jason, the Red Ranger and the leader of the Power Rangers.
Now we're going to look at Jason Lee Scott, the original Red Ranger from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Jason was a teenager from Angel Grove and a skilled martial artist who spent a lot of his time training at the youth center with his friends. But when Rita Repulsa escaped from her space dumpster on the moon, Zordon and Alpha 5 recruited 5 teenagers with attitude to become the Power Rangers. Jason was chosen to become the Red Ranger, gaining the power of the Tyrannosaurus, and becoming the leader of the very first Power Rangers team. Tyrannosaurus! Yeah! Jason is obviously one of the most important Red Rangers ever, because for most Western fans, he wasn't just the first Power Rangers Red, he was the first Red Ranger they ever saw, period. While Tyranno Ranger came first in Super Sentai, Jason is the character who introduced the Red Ranger archetype to an entire generation of Western viewers. He took the dinosaur-themed Red Ranger suit and turned it into one of the most recognizable superhero images of the 90s. As a character, Jason was disciplined, brave, and responsible, with a martial arts background and a strong sense of leadership. He isn't as flashy or larger than life as some of the Reds who would come later, but that's part of what makes him work. Jason feels like the classic team captain, strong enough to lead, mature enough to keep the team focused, and dependable enough that the others naturally trust him. Jason turned the Sentai Red archetype into a global pop culture icon, and even after he left the show, Jason was still important to the franchise, later returning as the Gold Ranger in Zeo and appearing in various crossovers. Jason wasn't just another Red Ranger, he made the Red Ranger famous all around the world. Tyrannosaurus! Jason's heir apparent was Rocky DeSantos, the second Red Ranger from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. Rocky was from Stone Canyon, and he came to Angel Grove with his friends Adam and Aisha for a martial arts competition. After proving that he was brave and willing to help others, Rocky eventually learned the Rangers' identities and was chosen to take Jason's place when he left for a peace conference in Switzerland. From there, Rocky became the new Mighty Morphin Red Ranger, inheriting the Tyrannosaurus powers and stepping into one of the most iconic suits in the franchise. This was the first Red Ranger replacement in Power Rangers history. Jason was the original leader and the face of the team, so Rocky had a pretty difficult role to step into. But what makes Rocky different is that he doesn't really become the new leader of the team in the same way that Jason was. By the time Rocky joins, Tommy had already moved into the leadership role as the White Ranger, which makes Rocky's version of Red feel a lot different from the original. Tyrannosaurus! As a character, Rocky is a lot more upbeat, energetic, and goofy compared to Jason. He still has the martial arts skills and the heart of a hero, but he doesn't have the same serious team captain energy. Instead, Rocky brings a more fun, lighthearted vibe to the team, which helps separate him from Jason instead of making him feel like a cheap copy. Next up is Ryo, who becomes Ryu Ranger from Dai Ranger. He was a cook with a dream of becoming the #1 gyoza chef in all of Japan. After being pulled into the conflict with the Gorma tribe, Ryo was saved by the mythical key beast Ryuseo and brought to Master Kaku, who helped guide him into becoming Ryu Ranger and the leader of the Dai Rangers. Ryu Ranger pushed the Red Ranger archetype deeper into martial arts fantasy. His whole identity is built around Ki, Chinese martial arts, and the dragon. As the Heavenly Fire Star, Ryo specializes in dragon kung fu and uses the powers of fire and thunder, making him feel more mystical and elemental than a lot of the Reds before him. As a character, Ryo was brave, hot-headed, and deeply loyal, but he also has a refreshingly human side because of his life as a cook. He's a normal guy working a job with a dream. That makes him feel a little more grounded, even though the season around him is full of ancient tribes, mystical beasts, and an over-the-top martial arts theme. Next up is Sasuke, or Ninja Red from Toku Ranked. Sasuke was the descendant of a legendary ninja, but at the start of the series, he wasn't exactly living like a disciplined warrior. He and Saizo were tricked into releasing the yokai back into the modern world after they had been sealed away for centuries. Because of that mistake, Sasuke and the other descendants of legendary ninja were forced to step up and become the Toku Rangers, with Sasuke becoming Ninja Red. Ninja Red took the Red Ranger archetype in a more playful, chaotic direction. He's still brave, loyal, and capable when it really matters, but he's also reckless, hot-headed, and a little more immature than a lot of the serious Reds that came before him. Sasuke was a troublemaker who had to grow into that role. Because of that, the leadership duties are usually handled by Tsuruhime or Ninja White. What makes Ninja Red stand out is the way Akarenger blends ninja mythology with comedy. Sasuke is tied to one of Japan's most famous legendary ninjas, but the show doesn't present him as the perfect stoic hero. He's goofy, impulsive, and unapologetically human, which gives him a unique kind of charm. Ninja Red showed how much the Red Ranger archetype had loosened up by the mid-90s. Red didn't always have to be the most serious, responsible guy in the room anymore. Sometimes he could be hilarious while fully embracing his flaws. Now we look at Oriko, the red Aquitar Ranger from Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers. Oriko was one of the Rangers from the planet Aquitar, who was called to Earth when Master Vile reversed time and turned the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers into kids. With the Rangers unable to fight, Zordon reached out to Aquitar for help, and Oriko arrived with the rest of his team to defend the planet until the situation could be fixed. Oriko was the first Red Ranger and Power Rangers who wasn't human. He was an alien warrior from another planet, which immediately makes him feel different from Jason and Rocky before him. He was calm, focused, and tactical. Much like in Toku Ranger, the White Ranger is the official leader of the team, but Oriko still felt like he could take on that responsibility if it was ever needed. He also has one major weakness that makes the Alien Rangers unique. They need water to survive, which limits how long they can safely remain on Earth. Oriko pushed the boundaries of what a Red Ranger could be in Power Rangers. The next Red Ranger was Goro Hoshino, who transformed into O-Red from O-Ranger. Goro was a captain in the United Air Force Overtech hardware and an ace pilot with a lot of combat training. When the Machine Empire Baranoia began its invasion of Earth, Chief Counselor Miura used the ancient powers of Choriki to create the O-Ranger system. Goro was chosen as the first member of the team, becoming O-Red and leading the O-Rangers against Baranoia. O-Red brings the Red Ranger archetype back into a more military style. After several Reds who were more fun and unique, Goro felt a lot more like a classic commander once again. He's serious, disciplined, quick-thinking, and trained in multiple forms of combat. He's the kind of Red Ranger who feels like he was built to lead a military squad. His abilities are tied to Choriki, a super energy connected to the lost civilization of Pangea. So even though he's a professional soldier, his powers are ancient and mythic. O-Red marked a return to the disciplined, tactical style of Red Ranger. He was the captain, an ace pilot, and the unquestioned leader. Goro shows that the Red Ranger archetype could still work as a serious military commander, while also being a part of the bigger, more mythological style that Sentai was developing in the 90s. Next up is Tommy Oliver, the face of Power Rangers during his time as Zeo Ranger 5 Red from Power Rangers Zeo. After the Mighty Morphin powers were destroyed and the command center was left in ruin, Tommy and the other Rangers gained a brand new set of powers. This time, Tommy became the Red Ranger, taking on the power of Zeo Ranger 5 and leading the team against the Machine Empire. He had already been the legendary Green Ranger, then the White Ranger, and by that point he was already the leader of the team. But Zeo made that leadership match the color. For the first time, Tommy wasn't a 6th Ranger with a unique color, he was the Red Ranger at the center of the team. As a character, Tommy was experienced, disciplined, and battle-tested. Compared to Jason and Rocky, he brought a different kind of Red Ranger energy because he had already gone through multiple eras of Ranger history before ever becoming Red. He knows what it's like to be an enemy, an outsider, a 6th Ranger, and a team leader, which gives his version of Red a lot of weight. He's a veteran that's stepping into the franchise's most iconic color. Tommy as the Red Ranger just felt right. He was the unquestioned leader, so becoming the Red Ranger was a natural evolution. Next, we're going to look at Kyosuke Jinai, better known as Red Racer from Car Ranger. Kyosuke was a test driver at the Pegasus Auto Garage, but when the alien DAP came to Earth looking for people who could fight the gang known as Baozok, Kyosuke and the other workers at the garage were chosen to become the Car Rangers, with Kyosuke becoming Red Racer and leading the team. Red Racer took the Red Ranger archetype in a way more comedic direction. A lot of the Reds before him were soldiers, martial artists, and ancient warriors, but Kyosuke starts off as a pretty selfish and immature character who doesn't always want the responsibility that comes with being a hero. He's brave when it counts, but he also acts really ridiculous sometimes, adding to the absurd comedy of Car Ranger. Car Ranger was basically a parody of Super Sentai itself, so Kyosuke wasn't just another Red Ranger. He was a Red Ranger being used to poke fun at the idea of Red Rangers. He still has a heroic heart, but the show constantly undercuts that with comedy, awkward situations, and ridiculous character moments. He showed that the Red Ranger didn't always have to be stoic or tragic, but he could be hilarious instead. He wasn't the most traditional Red Ranger, but that's exactly why he's memorable.
Red Lightning Turbo Power!
Now we look at Tommy Oliver once again, this time as the first Red Turbo Ranger from Power Rangers Turbo. After leading the team as the Red Zeo Ranger, Tommy and the others were given a brand new set of turbo powers to fight against Divatox. Tommy became the Red Turbo Ranger, continuing as the leader of the team. This was Tommy's second time wearing red, but the energy was a lot different from Zeo. In Zeo, Tommy becoming red felt like a major evolution for the character. In Turbo, it feels more like the final stretch of his original run. By this point, Tommy had already been the Green Ranger, the White Ranger, Zeo Red, and now Turbo Red. So he wasn't just another Red Ranger. He was the veteran face of the franchise carrying one more team into battle. As a character, Tommy was still brave, experienced, and dependable, but Turbo also shows him at a transition point. He had been doing this for years, and eventually he reached the point where it was time to pass the torch. So while Tommy's time as Turbo Red was relatively short, it played an important role in the larger history of Red Rangers.
Shift into turbo!
When Tommy stepped away from the show, he was replaced by TJ, the second Red Turbo Ranger. He crossed paths with the Rangers during one of their missions, and after proving himself by helping others and showing courage under pressure, he was chosen by Tommy to take over as the new Red Ranger. As a character, TJ was brave, selfless, and level-headed. He was really humble and never acted bigger than everyone else. He leads by staying calm and making the hard calls when things get serious. And even when the Turbo Rangers eventually lose their powers and the power chamber is destroyed, TJ never really breaks. He keeps the team together and helps lead them into the next era. After Turbo, he became the Blue Space Ranger and Power Rangers in Space, which made his arc feel even more unique. TJ started as the new Red Ranger, lost everything, and then kept fighting anyway. 1997's Mega Ranger featured Kenta Date, better known as Mega Red. Kenta was a high school student at Moroboshi High School and a member of the school's cybernetics club, but he was also obsessed with an arcade game called Mega Ranger. What he didn't know was that the game was actually being used by iNet to find people with the potential to operate their Mega Ranger technology. After Kenta became one of the best players of the game, he and the other members of the Cybernetics Club were brought to iNet's headquarters. But when Nezaregia attacked, the students were forced into action, with Kenta becoming Mega Red and leading the team. He had a unique premise of being a normal person and a gamer. His skill with the arcade game is what put him on INET's radar in the first place, which makes him feel a lot different from a lot of the Reds before him. Kenta was energetic and impulsive, but he also had a strong heart, and he enjoyed being in the middle of the action. He can be goofy and immature at times, but when things get serious, he steps up. That makes him feel like a more modern teen Red Ranger, closer to the kind of young, relatable hero that would become more common in both Sentai and Power Rangers later on. He was just a normal gamer who got pulled into a war and grew into the hero that the team needed him to be.
Alright, let's rock it!
Next up was Andros, better known as the Red Space Ranger from Power Rangers in Space. Andros was a human from the space colony KO-35, and he had already been fighting the forces of evil long before he ever met the former Turbo Rangers. After the power chamber was destroyed and the Turbo Rangers left Earth to search for Zordon, they eventually crossed paths with Andros. At first, Andros worked alone and didn't really trust them, but after realizing that they were also trying to save Zordon, he gave them the other Astromorphers and became the leader of the Space Rangers. Andros is one of the most important Red Rangers in Power Rangers history because he completely changed the scale of what a Red Ranger could be. Before him, most Red Rangers were based on Earth and dealt with threats that came directly to their city. But Andros was already part of a much larger cosmic war. He comes from another world and carries the weight of the entire universe on his shoulders. As a character, Andros is more guarded and emotionally distant than a lot of the Reds before him. He starts off as a loner who's already been fighting for so long that he struggles to let people in. A huge part of his arc is learning to trust the team, while also dealing with the mystery of his missing sister Caron, who's eventually revealed to be Astronema. Power Rangers in Space didn't just continue the story from Turbo, it brought the entire Zordon era to a climax, and Andros was the Red Ranger at the center of it all. His decision to shatter Zordon's energy tube is one of the biggest moments in the franchise, purifying many of the major villains from the early era. That makes Andros more than just another Red Ranger. He's the Red Ranger who helped end the first major saga of Power Rangers. We also need to mention Neji Red from Neji Ranger. The Neji Rangers were evil mirrored versions of Mega Ranger, created by Dr. Hinelar with the sole purpose of destroying the heroes. Neji Red shapeshifted to gain an advantage and frame the Mega Rangers, but was ultimately defeated after being unable to function with the other Neji Rangers as a team.
We're the Psycho Rangers.
Power Rangers in Space adapted Neji Red into the Red Psycho Ranger, with a similar premise. The Psycho Rangers were created by Astronema and were determined to destroy the Space Rangers. These Rangers weren't around very long, but they're remembered fondly by the fandom because of how cool they looked and just how evil they were. Next up is Yoma, or Ginga Red from Ginga Man. Yoma was a warrior from the hidden Ginga forest and the younger brother of Hyuga, who was originally chosen to become the 133rd Ginga Red. But when the space pirates Barban were released and attacked during the Ginga Man's initiation, Hyuga was knocked into a fissure. Before falling, he passed his Star Beast sword and the title of Ginga Red to Yoma, forcing him to step into the role his older brother was meant to have. Yoma wasn't the original chosen one, his brother was. So from the beginning, his journey was built around living up to Hyuga's legacy and proving that he can carry the mantle himself. As a character, Yoma was pretty childish early on, but Hyuga's apparent death forced him to grow up quickly. He carries a lot of guilt and pressure, but he also has a strong heart and a deep devotion to his team. His element is fire, which fits him perfectly because he's really emotional and determined. Ginga Red is historically significant because of the family angle to his story. He isn't just replacing another Red like the Vol Eagles or Rocky did. He's taking up the sword of his own brother, trying to honor him while becoming his own kind of hero. And when Hyuga eventually returns and becomes the second Black Knight, that brother dynamic gives Ginga Man one of its strongest emotional story beats. Yoma shows that Red can be more than just the chosen leader. He was a younger brother carrying a legacy he never expected to inherit. When Ginga Man was adapted into Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, the new Red Ranger was Leo Corbett, better known as the Red Galaxy Ranger. Leo wanted to join Terra Venture, the massive space colony leaving Earth to search for a new world. But unlike his older brother Mike, Leo wasn't officially accepted onto the mission, so he stowed away to follow him. After a portal opened to the planet Miranoi, Leo, Mike, and the others were pulled into the search for the legendary Quasar Sabers. Mike was actually the one who pulled a red Quasar Saber from the stone, but after falling into a crevice during the battle with Furio, he passed the saber to Leo, allowing Leo to become the Red Galaxy Ranger. Much like Gyoma and Ginga Man, Leo wasn't the original chosen Red, Mike was. So from the beginning, Leo's journey was built around proving that he's worthy of the Red Ranger powers. He doesn't start as the perfect leader, he starts as the reckless younger brother who was looking for adventure, but suddenly had to carry the responsibility of being the Red Galaxy Ranger. Leo was brave, passionate, and hot-headed, often rushing into danger without thinking. But he also had a strong sense of loyalty and a deep desire to do the right thing. Over time, he grew from a stowaway chasing his brother into a real leader who earned the Red Ranger role through courage, sacrifice, and experience. He wasn't chosen first, but he earned the role anyway, and that makes his journey one of the strongest Red Ranger story arcs of the post-Zordon era. Next up is Matoi Tatsumi, better known as Go Red from Go-Go 5. Matoi was the oldest of the 5 Tatsumi siblings and the captain of the Capital Fire Department's Special Rescue Brigade. When the Saima family began attacking Earth, Matoi and his siblings were recruited by his father, Professor Mondo Tatsumi, who had secretly developed the Go-Go 5 rescue system to prepare for the coming disaster. With his family reunited on the battlefield, Matoi became Go Red and led his family in the fight. Go Red took the Red Ranger archetype and grounded it in an emergency rescue role. He's a first responder and his entire identity is built around saving lives, protecting civilians, and running into danger when everyone else is trying to escape it. That gives him one of the most naturally heroic setups of any Red Ranger up to that point. Matoi was really serious and extremely protective of his family. Because he's the oldest sibling, he can be strict with the others, but it usually comes from a place of responsibility. He sees himself not just as the leader of the team, but as the big brother who has to keep everyone else alive. That makes his leadership feel personal in a way that's different from a military commander or a chosen warrior. Go-Go 5 took the sibling team idea from 5-Man and mixed it with a rescue theme. Matoi wasn't just a superhero in a broad sense, but someone whose entire persona is built around rescuing others.
I must have the strength of yours!
You'll never possess what I have. My strength comes from within. I have a heart.
Next we look at Carter Grayson, who morphed into the Red Lightspeed Ranger from Power Rangers Lightspeed Rescue. Carter was a firefighter in Mariner Bay and one of the best at what he did. As a child, he had been saved from a burning building by a mysterious firefighter, and that moment inspired him to become a firefighter himself. Years later, he was recruited by Captain Mitchell and Lightspeed Rescue to become the Red Ranger. Much like Matoi, Carter was an extremely professional Red Ranger. Carter's already a first responder before he ever becomes a Power Ranger. He already runs into danger for a living, so when he becomes the Red Lightspeed Ranger, it doesn't feel like he's becoming a hero for the first time. It feels like he's just getting an upgrade. Carter was serious, focused, and extremely stubborn, sometimes charging into danger without hesitation, but that fits his firefighter background. His whole mindset is built around saving people as quickly as possible, even if it puts him at risk. Carter brought the Red Ranger archetype back down to Earth in a really grounded way. He was fighting because people needed to be saved, and he was the guy for the job. The next Super Sentai series that released was Time Ranger, but before we talk about the main Time Red of the series, we have to talk about the original one, Captain Yuya Asami. He was the commanding officer of the Time Defense Bureau in the year 3000. Yuya was cold and self-serving. He was obsessed with creating a version of the future that he wants, trying to save his own life while at the same time caring very little for others. That obsession ironically resulted in his downfall, where he was fatally wounded and died. Yuya was played by Masaru Nagai, who also played Tatsuya. Captain Yuya had a creative story revolving around time manipulation that added a lot to the show. He's one of the darkest examples of a Red Ranger in Sentai history, since he carries the Red Ranger role, but he has no interest in being a hero. Time Ranger's main Time Red was Tatsuya Asami. Tatsuya was a 22-year-old martial artist and the son of a wealthy family, with his father expecting him to eventually inherit the Asami group. But Tatsuya didn't want his life decided for him. He wanted to choose his own future. After 4 Time Protection Department cadets from the 30th century chased the criminal Don Donero back to the year 2000, they needed Tatsuya's DNA to unlock their chrono changers. That pulled him into the fight, and Tatsuya became Time Red. Tatsuya's whole character is built around rejecting fate. Time Ranger is a season about time, history, and the future, so having the Red Ranger be someone who refused to accept a predetermined path for his life fits perfectly here. Tatsuya isn't from the 30th century like the others, and he isn't a professional time officer. He's the one guy from the present who gets dragged into the massive future conflict and decides to fight on his own terms. Tatsuya was brave and idealistic. He can be reckless, but he also has a strong moral center and a desire to help people. Because he joins an already established team, most of the leadership duties fall to Yori or Time Pink, but Tatsuya slowly becomes more and more of the leader over time. He's Yuya's ancestor, and that premise was super unique and made him one of the most memorable Red Rangers of the 2000s. Also featured in Time Ranger was Naoto Takizawa, better known as Time Fire. Naoto was a former college acquaintance and rival of Tatsuya, but unlike Tatsuya, he didn't come from wealth or privilege. He had to fight his way through life with pure ambition, and he carried a lot of resentment towards Tatsuya because of the advantages that Tatsuya seemed to have. After the Asami group formed the City Guardians to protect the city from Launder's attacks, Naoto became one of their members, eventually getting his hands on the V Commander and transforming into Time Fire. Time Fire isn't just another Red Ranger on the team. He has his own agenda. He doesn't join the Time Rangers in the traditional sense, he fights alongside them when it benefits him. He's ambitious and extremely driven. He wants power and recognition, and that makes him feel a lot different from Tatsuya. That contrast makes their rivalry one of the most interesting parts of Time Ranger. Time Fire took the Red Ranger archetype and flipped it on its head. He was an anti-hero that had his own goals and motivations, a 6th Ranger that wore red but was far from the typical Red Rangers that Sentai fans had seen before.
In the name of Time Force, I place you under arrest!
You don't know what you're up against!
You don't know what you're up against, Rancic!
The original Red Time Force Ranger was Alex Drake, from Power Rangers Time Force. Alex was a Time Force officer in the year 3000 and Jin's fiancé. After Rancic escaped custody, Alex tried to stop him, but Rancic overpowered him and left him for dead. Believing that Alex had been killed, Jin took his red chronomorpher and led the others back to the year 2001 to stop Rancic from changing history. Much like Yuya in Time Ranger, Alex gives us a version of the Red Ranger that existed before the main Red Ranger of the season. But while Yuya was manipulative and morally questionable, Alex is more complicated in a different way. He starts out as the heroic original Red Ranger, but when he returns later on in the season, he's colder and more controlling. Alex is disciplined, serious, and mission-focused. He clearly cares about Jin and the future, but he also has a rigid view of how things are supposed to happen. When he comes back to the past and briefly takes over as the Red Ranger again, he treats the team more like officers under his command instead of actual people. Wes Collins was the main Red Time Force Ranger from Power Rangers Time Force. Wes was the wealthy son of Mr. Collins, the head of Biolab and founder of the Silver Guardians. On the surface, Wes had everything handed to him: money, status, and a future already planned out by his father. But when the Time Force Rangers traveled from the year 3000 to 2001, they needed someone with Alex's DNA to activate the Red Chronomorpher. Because Wes was Alex's ancestor and genetic match, he was the only person in the present day who could unlock the powers. That pulled him into the fight against Rancic, making him the new Red Ranger. Much like in Time Ranger, Wes starts off as a rich kid who doesn't really know what he wants to do with his life, but becoming a ranger gives him purpose. Unlike Alex, who represents duty, control, and preserving the future, Wes represents free will. He believes that the future can change, and he proves that people don't have to be trapped by what history says they're supposed to become.
I wish I could live another 1,000 years so we could be together again.
Wes was brave, kind-hearted, and more emotionally vulnerable than Alex. He isn't the most experienced member of the team, and Jin is still the one with the most command experience, but Wes grows into the Red Ranger role by earning the team's trust. He leads less like a strict officer and more like someone who genuinely cares about the people around him. That makes his version of Red feel a lot warmer and more human.
Your time's up!
Also featured on Time Force was Eric Myers, better known as the Quantum Ranger. Eric was a member of the Silver Guardians, the private security force created by Wes's father to protect Silver Hills. He and Wes actually knew each other from private school, but unlike Wes, Eric didn't come from wealth. He grew up with less, had to fight for everything he had, and carried a lot of resentment towards Wes because of the privilege that he seemed to have. When the Quantum Morpher was discovered, Eric saw his chance to finally gain real power and recognition. So instead of letting the Time Force Rangers claim it, he took it for himself and became the Quantum Ranger. He wants status, authority, and the respect he feels he deserves. That makes him a very different kind of Ranger compared to Wes. Wes rejects the easy future that's handed to him, while Eric is trying to claim a future that was never handed to him at all. Eric was bitter, guarded, and extremely independent. He doesn't like accepting help, and for a lot of the season, he treats the other Rangers more like rivals than teammates. But underneath that tough exterior, he does have some real heroic qualities. He wants to protect the city, and he takes that role seriously. And over time, he becomes more willing to work with Wes and the others. Much like with Time Fire, the Quantum Ranger gave the show a lot of character contrast, with one Red born into privilege trying to become better, and another Red born without privilege trying to prove his worth. Next up is Kakeru Shishi, who transforms into Gao Red from Gao Ranger. Kakeru was a veterinarian with a love for animals. When the orgs began threatening the world, he was chosen by Gao Lion to become Gao Red, making him the 5th member to join the Gao Rangers and eventually serving as the team's leader in their fight to protect all life on Earth. Gao Red tied the Red Ranger role directly to nature, animals, and the idea of protecting life. He fights because, to him, every living thing is worth protecting. He's kind, sympathetic, and warm-hearted, but he's also brave and determined when the situation gets serious. One of his unique traits is that he can understand and communicate with animals, which fits perfectly with the wild animal theme of Gao Ranger. That makes him feel like a natural fit for the team's theme, because his civilian life and the role of the Red Ranger both revolve around animals.
Protecting nature is my path now. There has to be another way to stop the orgs besides fighting them.
Next up is Cole Evans, better known as the Red Wild Force Ranger from Power Rangers Wild Force. Cole was the son of scientists Richard and Elizabeth Evans, who were researching the lost world of Animaria with their colleague Victor Adler. But after Adler became corrupted by the Org Seeds and murdered Cole's parents, Cole was left behind as a baby and eventually raised by a jungle tribe. Years later, his adoptive family gave him a picture of his parents and the Red Lion Crystal, sending him out into the world to discover his past and find his destiny. That journey eventually brought him to Turtle Cove, where he met the Wild Force Rangers and became the Red Ranger chosen by the Red Lion. He had a deep spiritual connection to animals, the earth, and the Wild Swords. That makes him feel much more primal and instinctive than most Power Rangers Reds before him.
Hi, I'm Cole.
Good.
He isn't the most tactical or polished leader, especially early on, but he leads through heart, instinct, and pure belief in the mission. And because his personal story connects directly to Master Org, the main villain of the season, his fight becomes deeply personal. He wasn't just protecting the Earth, he confronted the tragedy that shaped his entire life. The next Super Sentai season was Hurricaneger, which featured Yosuke Shina, or Hurricane Red. Yosuke was a student at a ninja school when the space ninja group Jakanja attacked. He and 2 other surviving students were chosen to become the Hurricanegers, with Yosuke becoming Hurricane Red and leading the team. Hurricaneger was a return to a ninja theme, but Hurricane Red had a very different energy from Sasuke and Akarenger. Yosuke is still goofy at times, but he feels a lot more like an action hero. Even when the situation looked hopeless, he kept pushing forward. That determination became one of his defining traits. That's why he's the leader, even though he doesn't always seem like the most polished or disciplined member of the team. Yosuke wasn't a perfect commander, but he was extremely driven and he grew into the role with heart and persistence. Also featured in Hurricaneger was Iko Kasumi, who transformed into Kabuto Ranger. Iko was the older of the two Kasumi brothers, and unlike the Hurricanegers, they were trained in a rival ninja school with a much more brutal philosophy. After Jakanja attacked and destroyed their academy, the Kasumi brothers survived and became the Go Raigers, with Iko becoming Kabuto Ranger. Like Time Fire, Kabuto Ranger was another example of a second Red Ranger within his season. In addition to being a darker shade of red, Iko had a completely different energy compared to Hurricane Red. He was cold, serious, and aggressive, and along with his brother, he fought against the Hurricanegers before eventually becoming their allies. His fighting style is based around shadow style techniques, and his theme is the rhinoceros beetle. Along with Time Fire, Kabuto Ranger changed what a Red Ranger could be: a rival, an anti-hero, and a darker shade of red. Next, we look at Shane Clark, the Red Wind Ranger from Power Rangers Ninja Storm. Shane was a student at the Wind Ninja Academy, training alongside Tori and Dustin before Lothor attacked the school and captured most of the other students. Because Shane, Tori, and Dustin were the only ones left, they were given the Wind Morphers and became the Wind Rangers, with Shane becoming the Red Ranger and the leader of the team. Compared to previous Reds, Shane had a more laid-back kind of energy. He starts off as a young ninja student who still has a lot to learn, but he also has the confidence and natural courage that makes him a good fit as the Red Ranger. He's brave, loyal, and determined, but he can also be stubborn and a little too sure of himself sometimes. After several seasons with more professional or serious Red Rangers, Shane was younger and more energetic. He still had the responsibility of leading the team, but he did it with a more relaxed, modern style that fit the early 2000s perfectly.
You down there in the bug suits!
You better not be talking to us.
Ninja Storm also featured Hunter Bradley, better known as the Crimson Thunder Ranger. Hunter was a student at the Thunder Ninja Academy, training alongside his younger brother Blake, but after Lothor attacked the ninja academies, Hunter and Blake were manipulated into believing that Sensei Watanabe was responsible for their parents' deaths. Because of that, the Thunder Rangers originally came after the Wind Rangers as enemies, with Hunter becoming the Crimson Thunder Ranger and leading the attack against Shane, Tori, and Dustin.
It's showtime!
Hunter's intense, disciplined, and driven by anger, which makes him feel like a serious threat when he first appears. He's stubborn and hard-headed, and once he believes someone is his enemy, he fully commits to that fight. But after learning the truth about Lothor's deception, Hunter and Blake eventually turn against him and become allies to the Wind Rangers. Even then, Hunter keeps a more serious edge compared to the rest of the team, which helps him stand out as more than just another extra ranger. Hunter was a dark kind of Red Ranger that gave the season a lot of contrast. Next, we look at Yoga Hakua, who becomes Abba Red from Abba Ranger. Yoga was an environmental investigator that spent some time living in the United States before returning to Japan. He was also raising his young niece Mai after the death of his brother and sister-in-law, which gave him a strong sense of responsibility before he ever became a ranger. When the Evolian invaded from Dino Earth, Yoga was chosen to become Abba Red, leading the Abba Rangers into battle. Abare means to rampage or go wild, and Yoga fits that perfectly. He's passionate, physical, and explosive when fighting, but he also has a warm, caring side that comes through in his relationship with Mai and the rest of the team. He's a Red Ranger powered by heart, family, and pure aggressive energy. Now we look at Connor McKnight, the Red Dino Ranger from Power Rangers Dino Thunder. Connor was a student at Reefside High and a soccer player with dreams of going pro. But after getting detention with Ethan and Kira, the three of them ended up discovering Tommy Oliver's hidden lab and coming into contact with the Dino Gems. Connor bonded with the Red Dino Gem, gaining super speed and becoming the Red Dino Ranger. Connor starts out as one of the more immature Red Rangers. He's athletic, confident, and naturally brave, but he can also be arrogant and self-centered early on. He doesn't start the season as a great leader, but as a high school athlete who suddenly gets thrown into a war and has to grow into that responsibility. The more he fights alongside Ethan, Kira, Trent, and Tommy, the more he learns to put the team before himself. He was a flawed character who had to mature into the Red Ranger role, which made him a great fit for the season. Next up is Bon, who transforms into Deca Red from Deca Ranger. Bon was a hot-headed officer in the Space Police, originally stationed at the Fire Squad before being transferred to Earth's SPD branch. After arriving on Earth, he became Deca Red and joined the Deca Rangers in their fight against the Alienizers, serving as the team's Red Ranger and one of its most aggressive fighters. He's a space police detective, which makes his entire identity about justice, investigation, law enforcement, and stopping criminals across the galaxy. He's loud and impulsive, with an insane temper. He charges into danger and sometimes clashes with the more disciplined members of the team, especially Hoji and Tetsu. But underneath all that fire, Bon has a strong sense of justice and a real talent for police work. Bon feels like an unhinged action hero. He was a hot-headed detective chasing alienizers across the galaxy, making him one of the most memorable Red Rangers in all of Sentai.
SPD! Emergency!
SPD Red Ranger!
Next we look at Jack Landers, the first SPD Red Ranger from Power Rangers SPD. Jack was a thief who worked alongside his best friend Z, stealing food and clothing to help others. But after the two were caught by SPD, Jack was given a chance to avoid prison by joining the academy. At first, he had no real interest in becoming a part of law enforcement, but when the B Squad Rangers were in danger, Jack stepped up, becoming the Red Ranger and eventually taking over as the leader of the team. Jack is an interesting character because he's one of the least traditional Red Rangers up to that point. He starts as someone SPD would normally be arresting. That gives his Red Ranger journey a different flavor, because he isn't just learning how to fight evil, he's learning how to fight with a team and use his instincts for something bigger than his own survival. Jack is sarcastic, independent, and rebellious, but his story arc is about becoming more than that. Over time, he grows into a capable leader who can make tough calls and earn the respect of people like Sky, who originally believed that he should have been Red Ranger instead. By the end of SPD, Jack chose to leave the team and help people on the streets again, bringing his story full circle. He becomes a Ranger, grows into the role, and then decides that his purpose was never just wearing the suit, it was helping people.
SPD! Emergency!
The next Red Ranger on SPD was Sky Tate. Sky was originally the Blue Ranger of B Squad, but from the beginning, his dream was to become Red. His father had been a Red Ranger before him, and Sky wanted to follow in his footsteps. But when B Squad was promoted to active Ranger status, Commander Kruger chose Jack as the Red Ranger instead, leaving Sky as Blue. He's borderline obsessed with being Red. He has the training, the discipline, the loyalty to SPD, and the family legacy. But he also has a lot of pride. Early on, Sky looks at Jack and sees someone less qualified taking the position he thought he had earned. That rivalry became one of the strongest parts of SPD. He starts off emotionally guarded and rigid, but over time he becomes more humble and more willing to trust his teammates. Sky showed that the role of Red Ranger was something that had to be earned, not just inherited through talent or legacy. He wanted to be Red from the start, but he wasn't ready for what the role actually meant. By the end of SPD, after Jack leaves the team, Sky finally becomes the Red Ranger, and it feels earned because he grew past the pride that held him back. His journey makes him one of the best examples of a character who doesn't begin as Red, but has to mature into the responsibility.
SPD! Emergency!
Several years later, Bridge Carlson became the third SPD Red Ranger. Bridge started out as the Green Ranger of B Squad. He was the team's quirky tech genius and mechanic. After Jack left the team and Sky was promoted to Red, Bridge eventually moved up the ranks himself, first becoming the Blue Ranger and later becoming the Red Ranger by the time he returned in Operation Overdrive's Once a Ranger crossover. Bridge has one of the most unusual promotion arcs in Power Rangers history. Most Red Rangers are introduced as Red from the beginning, or they inherit the role in a major dramatic moment. But Bridge slowly worked his way up from Green to Blue to Red. That makes his Red Ranger status feel like long-term growth.
Let's do this.
SPD also featured an extremely unique Red Ranger with Charlie, the A Squad Red Ranger. Before B Squad became the main Power Rangers team of the season, A Squad was treated as the top-level heroes, the best trained, most respected, and most powerful Ranger unit at SPD. But after being sent into battle against Emperor Grum's forces, A Squad disappeared and were missing in action. Later, they returned and revealed they had betrayed SPD, choosing to side with Grum instead.
You'll be coming with us, Commander Kruger. You have an appointment with Emperor Grum.
A Squad Red takes the Red Ranger archetype and twists it into something much darker. On paper, Charlie has everything you would want from a Red Ranger. She's the leader of an elite team, and she represents the highest rank of active Rangers at SPD. But instead of being the heroic standard everyone should aspire to, she becomes a corrupted version of that ideal. A Squad had the status, the training, and the reputation, but they lack the heart and loyalty that actually makes someone worthy of being a Ranger. That contrast makes Charlie a strong rival for B Squad. A Squad Red was one of the earliest female Red Rangers in Power Rangers history, but she's a villain, and Charlie proves that being the official elite Red Ranger doesn't mean anything if you abandon the values the suit is supposed to represent. Magi Ranger featured Kai Ozu, better known as Magi Red. Kai was the youngest of the 5 Ozu siblings, living a normal life with them and their mother. But when Infertia began attacking the surface world, their mother revealed that the family had inherited magical powers. She gave her children the Magi Phones, allowing them to become the Magi Rangers, with Kai becoming Magi Red and fighting alongside his brothers and sisters to protect the world. Kai is the youngest sibling, so he doesn't always feel like the obvious leader at first. He's emotional, impulsive, and sometimes immature, but his bravery is what sets him apart. He's full of life and keeps pushing forward even when he's scared. But underneath that reckless energy, Kai has a strong heart and a deep love for his family, which is really what drives him forward throughout the season. Kai showed that a Red Ranger doesn't always have to be the oldest, most experienced, or most disciplined member of the team. Sometimes Red is the one whose courage inspires everyone else to believe in the magic within themselves.
Magical source! Mystic force!
Always Mr. Ranger!
Next up is Nick Russell, better known as the Red Mystic Ranger from Power Rangers Mystic Force. Nick was a teenager who arrived in Briarwood on his motorcycle and ended up working at the Rockporium with the other future Rangers. But when the forces of the underworld began rising, Nick and the others were pulled into the magical world of Rootcore, where they were chosen to become the Mystic Force Rangers. At first, Nick was the most skeptical of the group, struggling to believe in magic or accept that this was really his destiny. But over time, he embraced his role as the Red Mystic Ranger. He's eventually revealed to be Bowen, the son of Linbo and Udana, two of the most important magical warriors in the season's mythology. That means his connection to the battle against the underworld goes much deeper than he realizes at first. Nick was brave, headstrong, and emotional. He doesn't immediately buy into this world of magic, and that makes his journey different from Kai and Magi Ranger, who was born directly into a magical family and learns to grow into that legacy. Nick's story is more about discovering that the magic was always a part of him, even when he didn't know it. Next up is Satoru Akashi, who transforms into Boken Red from Bokenger. Satoru was once a legendary treasure hunter known as the Immortal Fang, but after a tragic expedition cost him the lives of his partners, he stepped away from that life. Eventually, he was recruited by SGS, the Search Guard Successor Foundation, an organization dedicated to finding and protecting dangerous treasures known as precious. From there, Satoru became Boken Red and the leader of the Bokengers, where they would take on missions around the world. Satoru is usually calm, cool, and collected. He's known as the fiery adventurer, but he can usually keep that fire in check, at least on the surface. Bokenger was the 30th Super Sentai season, and Satoru was front and center with a classic but polished leader style. He isn't just leading the team into battle, he's leading them into ruins, traps, ancient secrets, and dangerous discoveries that could change the world forever. Satoru's Power Rangers counterpart is Mac Hartford, the Red Overdrive Ranger from Power Rangers Operation Overdrive. Mac was the son of billionaire adventurer Andrew Hartford, who discovered the Corona Aurora and accidentally released Moltor and Furious. To stop them, Andrew recruited a team to fight back and originally planned to become the Red Ranger himself. But when Mac discovered what was going on, he wanted to join the mission too. After proving himself in battle, Mac became the Red Overdrive Ranger and took his father's place as the leader of the team. He starts out as a sheltered rich kid who dreams about adventure, then suddenly gets thrown into a global treasure hunt for the Corona Aurora jewels.
Kick into overdrive! Red Ranger!
The biggest twist with Mac is that eventually he learns he isn't Andrew's biological son at all. He's an android created by Andrew and programmed to believe that he was human. That makes Mac one of the strangest Red Rangers in Power Rangers history. His story is about identity, artificial life, and what it means to be human. That makes him extremely memorable. Next, we look at one of the most unique Red Rangers ever with Akared. Unlike most of the Reds we've talked about so far, Akared doesn't really have a normal human alter ego. He's basically the living embodiment of the Red Ranger legacy up to this point. He first appeared during the Akarenger vs Super Sentai anniversary film, which brought together Rangers from the previous 30 years of the franchise. He has the ability to channel the powers and techniques of past Red Rangers, and in his debut, he uses forms and attacks connected to Rangers like Gao Red, Hurricane Red, Abba Red, Deca Red, and Magi Red, making him feel less like one specific hero and more like a walking tribute to the entire Red Ranger lineage. That role becomes even more important later in Gokaiger, where we learn that he's connected to Captain Marvelous, where he sets Marvelous on the path that eventually leads him to become Gokai Red. Akared showed that Sentai had become self-aware about just how iconic the Red Ranger had become over the years. Next up is Jan Kandao, who becomes Geki Red from Geki Ranger. Jan was wild and feral after being raised in a forest away from normal society. Because of that, he didn't really understand the world the same way everyone else did, but he had strong natural instincts, a connection to animals, and a fighting spirit. After being discovered by the Geki Jukin school, Jan was brought under the guidance of Master Shafu and became Geki Red, fighting against the Rinjukin Akugata. His fighting style is based around Geki Ju Tigerkin, which fits him perfectly because he fights with tons of energy and the instincts of a wild tiger. He uses strange words and sound effects to describe his feelings, which makes him seem goofy at first, but it shows that he sees the world in a different way from most people. He doesn't really understand social norms, but he understands courage, friendship, and the animal spirit. After so many Reds who were professionals or chosen warriors, Jan feels like something much more primal. Geki Ranger is all about training the body, heart, and mind, and Jan represents that idea more than anyone. He's not the most traditional Red Ranger, but that's what makes him stand out.
The strength of a tiger! Red Ranger!
Next up is Casey Rhodes, better known as the Red Jungle Fury Ranger from Power Rangers Jungle Fury. Casey was a new student at a secret kung fu school built around animal spirits. When Jared was bullying another student, Casey stood up to him, showing the courage and compassion that Master Mao was looking for. After Daishi was released and Master Mao was destroyed, Casey, Theo, and Lily were sent to Ocean Bluff to find their new master, RJ. From there, Casey was given a morpher and became the Red Jungle Fury Ranger. He isn't the most experienced fighter on the team, and he definitely doesn't start as the obvious leader. Theo and Lily have more training, while Casey is still learning the basics. But what makes him worthy of being Red isn't raw skill, it's his heart. He stands up for people who are being bullied, and he has a natural heroic instinct even before he becomes a ranger. Casey was kind, determined, and sometimes insecure. He knows he has a lot to prove, and that makes his journey feel more like a real student becoming a master over time. Over the season, he grows from the inexperienced newcomer of the team into a confident warrior who can stand on his own. Casey's story is all about growth, humility, and learning that true strength isn't just about fighting ability. It's about compassion, discipline, and having the courage to protect others. Our next ranger is Sosuke Esumi, better known as Go-On Red from Go-Onger. Sosuke was a former race car driver known as the Speed King. When the Gaiart clan began threatening Earth from the machine world, Sosuke was chosen by the Engine Speedor to become Goon Red, leading the Go-Ongers in their fight to protect the human world. Goon Red takes the Red Ranger archetype and turns the energy way up. He's loud, confident, stubborn, and he almost never doubts himself. His entire personality is built around speed, momentum, and believing that things can work out if you just charge forward hard enough. He leads less through careful strategy and more through raw optimism. He believes in his teammates, and he refuses to back down even when the odds are stacked against him. That makes him a different kind of Red from some of the more serious leaders of the 2000s. Go-Onger pushed Sentai into a much louder and more comedic direction. Sosuke fits that tone perfectly. He's a racing-themed Red Ranger whose whole identity is about being loud, enthusiastic, and inspiring enough to keep the team moving forward. Next up is Scott Truman, or Ranger Operator Series Red, from Power Rangers RPM. Scott was a military pilot and the younger son of Colonel Mason Truman, the leader of Corinth's defense team. Before becoming a Ranger, Scott flew under the call sign Eagle 2 alongside his older brother Marcus, who was Eagle 1. But during the war against Vengix, Marcus was shot down, and Scott barely made it into the domed city of Corinth before the gates closed. After that, Scott became Ranger Operator Series Red and led the RPM Rangers in the fight to protect the last surviving human city on Earth.
Nitro Sword!
Scott was the Red Ranger in one of the darkest settings Power Rangers ever had. He's defending what's basically the last safe place on the planet after Vengix has already decimated almost everywhere else. That gives him a heavy sense of responsibility. He lives in the shadow of his older brother Marcus, and he also struggles with his father, Colonel Truman, who oftentimes treats him more like a soldier than a son. RPM completely reimagined what a Power Rangers season could be. The post-apocalyptic setting, the dark tone, and the war against Vengix all make Scott feel different from the Reds that came before him. He was a leader in a broken world, a survivor that was humanity's last line of defense. Next up is Takeru Shiba, better known as Shinken Red, a legendary Red Ranger from Shinkenger. Takeru was raised as the 18th head of the Shiba clan, a samurai bloodline that had fought the Gadoshu for generations. From childhood, he was trained to carry the burden of the Shiba family and master the Mojikara needed to seal away Dokoku. When the Gadoshu returned, Takeru gathered his retainers and became Shinken Red, leading the Shinkengers into battle as their lord. That structure gives his leadership a different feeling from a normal team captain. There's more tradition and pressure built into the role. Takeru was serious, disciplined, and emotionally guarded. A lot of the time, he comes across as cold or harsh, but a lot of that is because he's carrying a responsibility he never really got to choose. He was raised to believe that his life existed for one purpose, defeating the Gadoshu and protecting the world. That makes him feel like one of the heavier Red Rangers because his strength comes with isolation. Shinken Red is easily one of the most iconic modern Red Rangers. He takes the classic leader role and gives it a specific cultural identity through samurai hierarchy, family obligation, and the lord and retainer dynamic. Takeru's story brings him full circle, where we find out that his sister was the true heir to the Shiba clan all along. Eventually, Shinkenger introduces us to Kaoru Shiba, better known as Princess Shinken Red. Kaoru was the true 18th head of the Shiba clan, but for most of the series, she stayed hidden while Takeru acted in her place. Because Kaoru possessed the knowledge to seal Dokoku away, the Shiba clan needed to keep her safe until the time came to use that power. When she finally appeared, she revealed that Takeru was not actually the true lord of the Shiba clan, and she took her rightful place as Shinken Red. When Kaoru arrived, she completely changed the way we look at Takeru's role in the season. Up until her reveal, Takeru seemed like the destined samurai lord carrying the full weight of the Shiba bloodline, but Kaoru's arrival reveals that Takeru's identity was built around protecting her secret. That makes her one of the most important late-game Rangers in Sentai, because her existence recontextualizes the entire team dynamic. Kaoru was serious, graceful, and focused on her duty. She was raised away from the rest of the team to master the power that could seal away Dokoku. Because of that, she doesn't have the same emotional bond with the retainers that Takeru does. She has the bloodline, the title, and the authority, but Takeru is the one who has actually fought beside the team and earned their trust over time. She's one of the most significant female rangers in Super Sentai history. She's the legitimate head of the Shiba clan and the rightful Shinken Red by bloodline. Despite that, Takeru is the Red that the team went to war with, and that tension makes her one of the most interesting Red Rangers in the entire franchise.
Samurai Ranger, fire! Ha! Ha! Lion folding Zord!
Power Rangers Samurai featured Jaden Shiba, the Red Samurai Ranger. Jaden was a descendant of the Shiba clan and was raised from childhood by Mentor G after his father's final battle against Master Xandrid. Because of his bloodline, Jaden was trained in the ancient ways of the Samurai Rangers, learning symbol power, swordsmanship, and the responsibility of leading the team against the Nilox. When Xandrid and his forces returned, Jaden gathered the other Samurai Rangers and became the Red Ranger, leading the fight to protect the world.
Shogun mode! Power of the ancestors!
Jaden was calm, guarded, and disciplined. He kept people at a distance for a while because he believed that the mission matters more than his own happiness. That makes him feel similar to Takeru from Shinkenger, but Power Rangers leans even harder into the lonely burden of leadership. On the surface, Jaden seemed like a pretty traditional Red Ranger, but underneath that, he was carrying a massive secret, much like Takeru.
Who are you? She's my big sister.
Power Rangers Samurai eventually introduced us to Lauren Shiba, the second Red Samurai Ranger. Her story was almost one-to-one with Takeru and Kaoru's story. Lauren was Jaden's older sister and the true head of the Shiba clan, making her the rightful Red Ranger. While Jaden was raised to lead the team in public, Lauren was kept hidden so she could master the sealing symbol that could defeat Master Xandrid. To protect that secret, Jaden acted as a decoy until Lauren was finally ready to return. Lauren completely changes the way we look at Jaden. For most of the season, Jaden seems like the chosen Red Ranger carrying the full weight of the Shiba legacy. But once Lauren arrives, we learn that Jaden's entire mission was built around protecting her identity. She wasn't just another Ranger showing up late in the story, she was the actual heir that the villains were never supposed to know about. She has the authority, the bloodline, and the sealing power, but she doesn't have the same bond with the team that Jaden built over time, which creates conflict on the show. Because Lauren is technically the true Red Ranger, but Jaden is the one the teams followed, trusted, and fought with since the beginning. Next up is Alata, or Gosei Red, from Gosager. He and the other Gosagers were training on Earth when the Warstar aliens destroyed the Heaven's Tower, cutting them off from the Gosei world. With no way to return home, Alata and the others stayed on Earth and became its protectors, with Alata becoming Gosei Red and fighting to defend the planet. Gosei Red was a much more gentle kind of Red Ranger. He was soft-spoken and optimistic, but when the battle starts, he becomes serious and determined, willing to fight for what he believes in. He has a graceful, angelic fighting style that was quite different from the other Reds. Gosager was built around angels protecting Earth, and Alata embodies that theme perfectly. He was a more compassionate version of the archetype, a Red Ranger whose strength comes from kindness and the desire to protect the beauty in this world.
Fury of the Dragon! Yeah! Megaforce Red!
When Gosager was adapted into Power Rangers Megaforce, the Red Megaforce Ranger was Troy Burrows. Troy was a new student at Harwood County High School, and before becoming a Ranger, he was already a skilled martial artist. When the Warstar aliens began threatening Earth, Gosei awakened and chose 5 teenagers to become the Megaforce Rangers. Troy was chosen as the Red Ranger and leader of the team, taking on the power of the dragon and fighting to protect the Earth. He has a strong belief in teamwork and the idea that the Rangers can overcome anything if they stand together.
Gosei, do you read me? Gosei!
As a character, Troy is probably best remembered for his mysterious dreams of the legendary battle. He keeps seeing past Power Rangers fighting in a massive war. That gives him a connection to the larger legacy of the franchise, even before Super Megaforce makes that legacy the main gimmick later on. Megaforce was Power Rangers' 20th anniversary season, and Troy was a serious hero who stood at the front of a team meant to honor everything Power Rangers had become. Now we look at one of the most popular Rangers of all time, Captain Marvelous, who transforms into Gokai Red from Gokaiger. Marvelous was originally a space pirate that was a teammate of Akarenger and the Red Pirates, traveling the universe in search of treasure. After betrayal caused the end of the Red Pirates, Marvelous eventually formed his own crew aboard the Gokai Galleon and became the leader of the Gokaigers, using the Ranger keys to transform into past Super Sentai heroes while fighting against the Zangyak Empire. Marvelous completely changed the way we look at Red Rangers. He never really cared much about being considered a good guy at all. He's cocky, blunt, greedy, and really only cares about treasure. But underneath that attitude, Marvelous has a strong sense of loyalty to his crew, and there's a heroic side of him that doesn't really start to show until we get further into the season. Marvelous is larger than life, with tons of swagger. He doesn't lead by being polite or inspirational in the usual Red Ranger way. He leads because he has presence. He's the kind of Red Ranger who walks into a room like he already owns it. He feels like a mix of a modern hero and an inheritor of the entire Red Ranger legacy. Gokaiger was the 35th anniversary season of Super Sentai, and Marvelous was front and center for that celebration. Through the Ranger keys, he could transform into past Red Rangers and other Sentai heroes, literally carrying the power of the franchise's history with him. That makes him more than just the Red Ranger of one season. He's a pirate captain sailing through the entire legacy of Super Sentai, stealing the spotlight and always making things showy.
Super Megaforce, Red!
When Gokaiger was adapted into Power Rangers Super Megaforce, Troy was the Red Ranger once again. After leading the Megaforce Rangers against Warstar and the threats that followed, Troy and the others faced a much larger invasion from the Armada. To help them fight this new enemy, Gosei gave the team new legendary morphers and Ranger keys, allowing Troy to become the Super Megaforce Red Ranger and unlock the ability to transform into past Red Rangers from Power Rangers history. As the Red Megaforce Ranger, Troy already had mysterious visions of the legendary battle, but Super Megaforce finally connected those visions to the larger history of the franchise. Now he wasn't just leading one team, he was carrying the powers of the Rangers who came before him, especially the past Reds. Next up is Hiromu Sakurada, or Red Buster from Go Busters. Hiromu was one of 3 children caught in the incident at the Energy Management Center when Messiah tried to take over the facility. During that crisis, his parents and the other researchers were trapped in subspace, while Hiromu was saved. Years later, he became Red Buster, partnering with his Cheetah buddy Roid, Cheetah Nick, to fight the Vaglas. Go Busters as a team felt like a special ops unit, and Red Buster was a tactical and spy-themed Red Ranger. He was serious, focused, and mission-driven, with a much colder and more professional edge than a lot of the louder and more emotional Reds that came before him. Hiromu also has one of the strangest weaknesses of any Red Ranger: chickens. Because of a childhood drama involving a chicken coop, Hiromu freezes when he sees a chicken, whether it's real, a picture, or even a drawing. It's an absurd weakness on the surface, but it also gives an otherwise serious character a funny human flaw. His special ability is super speed, which allows him to move so fast that it almost looks like teleportation. Go Busters had a more serious tone and a stronger focus on technology. Hiromu fit that perfectly as a Red Ranger who feels more like an elite operative than a superhero.
Whoa! A Power Ranger? You're not going anywhere, thief!
When Go Busters was adapted into Power Rangers Beast Morphers, it featured Devin Daniels, better known as the Grid Battle Force Red Ranger. Devin was the son of Coral Harbor's mayor, Adam Daniels, and even though his father wanted him to take life more seriously, Devin was obsessed with video games. When Evox tried to corrupt Grid Battle Force's Ranger candidates during the Morph X Tower demonstration, Devin was caught in the chaos. After being infused with cheetah DNA and connected to the Morphin Grid, Devin became the Red Ranger and formed a new team. Much like with Red Buster, Devin brought the Red Ranger archetype into a more tech-based and modern premise. He starts off as a gamer who doesn't seem like the obvious pick to lead a team, but his reflexes, courage, and ability to think quickly under pressure make him a natural fit for the Red Ranger. As a character, Devin's confident, clever, and sometimes a little immature early on, but he grows into a much more responsible leader as the season moves along. He also has super speed and a weakness to dogs that gives his character a funny limitation tied to the animal DNA experiment. His relationship with his father also gives him a personal arc, and he learns that being a ranger is more than just an adventure, it's a responsibility. Beast Morphers was the first Power Rangers season of the Hasbro era, making Devin the Red Ranger who helped launch a new chapter of the franchise after the Neo Saban era ended. Next up is Nobuo Akagi, Akiba Red from Akiba Ranger. Nobuo was a delivery man and a hardcore Super Sentai otaku. He was recruited to become part of the unofficial Sentai Akiba Ranger, a team powered by delusion and fandom. Akiba Red is basically the Red Ranger archetype turned into a parody of itself. Nobuo doesn't just become a ranger, he already knows Sentai inside and out. He understands the tropes, the poses, the speeches, the roll calls, the team dynamics, and the history of the franchise because he's a fan of it within the story. That gives him a different kind of relationship to the Red Ranger role, because he's fully aware that he's living inside of a fantasy. Nobuo is ridiculous and constantly over the top, but he also genuinely wants to be a hero underneath all the comedy. His power comes from imagination and delusion, which makes him one of the weirdest Reds in the entire franchise. And because Akiba Ranger is an unofficial parody, Nobuo can play with the fourth wall in ways a normal Sentai Red usually can't. Akiba Red showed how iconic the Red Ranger archetype had become by the 2010s. By this point, Sentai had been around long enough that Toei could make an entire parody series about adult fans obsessing over the franchise. Akiba Red represents the Sentai fandom itself, the viewer who grew up loving Sentai so much that he literally imagines himself into the suit. Now we're going to look at Daigo Kiryu, or Kyoryu Red, from Kyoryuger. He was wild and adventurous, and he spent years traveling the world with his father. After his father left to continue on his own mysterious journey, Daigo kept traveling on his own and eventually crossed paths with the Gabutaira. But Gabutaira didn't just hand him the power, Daigo had to prove his bravery first, battling and taming Gabutaira before finally earning the right to become Kyoryu Red. Daigo's version of the Red Ranger feels larger than life. He has a massive amount of fearless charisma where he can walk into almost any situation and make friends with nearly anyone. He's loud, brave, physical, and almost impossible to intimidate. Sentai had already featured several dino-themed Red Rangers at this point, but compared to earlier dinosaur Reds like Geki or Ryoga, Daigo feels even more confident and more charismatic. Whether you love him or think he overshadows the team a little too much, Kyoryu Red is one of the clearest examples of a modern Sentai Red being treated like the king of the entire show.
Energize! Think you could take me on? No way!
Power Rangers Dino Charge featured Tyler Navarro, the Dino Charge Red Ranger. Tyler searched for clues about his missing father, who had disappeared years earlier during an encounter with Fury. That search eventually led Tyler to the Amber Beach Dinosaur Museum, where he discovered the Red Energem and bonded with it. After that, he became the Dino Charge Red Ranger, using the powers of the Tyrannosaurus Rex to fight Sledge, Fury, and the other villains trying to collect the Energems for themselves. Tyler was brave, upbeat, and extremely determined. He had a ton of confidence, but he also had a strong emotional drive underneath it because so much of his story is about finding his dad. He helped bring Power Rangers back to the dinosaur theme in a big way. He isn't as stoic as Jason or as cocky as Connor. He's more of a fun, adventurous Red with a personal mystery driving him forward. That makes him a strong modern version of the dinosaur Red Ranger. Now we look at Right Suzuki, better known as Tokyu Ichigo, from Tokuger. Right was one of 5 childhood friends, but at the start of the series, he and the others don't fully remember who they really are or where they come from. After being caught up in the conflict between the Rainbow Line and the Shadow Line, Right becomes Tokyu Ichigo, leading the Tokugers as they travel from station to station, fighting to protect people's imagination from the darkness. He's a kid at heart, literally and emotionally, whose greatest power comes from his ability to imagine a better future. Out of all the Tokugers, Right has the strongest imagination. He's the kind of Red Ranger who doesn't always have a plan, but he does have absolute faith that his team can find a way to succeed. That fits Tokuger perfectly, because the whole season is built around childhood wonder and the idea that imagination is strong enough to defeat the darkness. Next up is Takaharu Igasaki, Akarenger from Ninja. Takaharu was the grandson of Yoshitaka Igasaki, the legendary ninja known as the Last Ninja. After the Kiba-Oni army began to reawaken, Takaharu and his cousins were gathered together to continue their family's ninja legacy and fight back against the yokai. Using the ninja Ichibanto, Takaharu becomes Akarenger and took his place as the team's Red Ranger. He isn't the calmest, smartest, or most strategic member of the team. In fact, he's usually the one charging in first and thinking later. But that's also what makes him work. His whole personality is built around the belief that he can surpass his grandfather and become the last ninja himself. Akarenger brought the classic ninja Red Ranger back into Sentai after Kaku Ranger and Hurricaneger, but with an even more exaggerated style. Ninja also gave us one of the most unique Red Ranger moments ever with 3 different Akaningers. During the final stretch of the series, Takaharu isn't the only person to use the Akarenger identity. His father and his grandfather also transform, giving us 3 generations of Akaningers standing shoulder to shoulder. Ninja was a season built around family and legacy, so seeing 3 generations of the Igasaki bloodline all transform at once was a cool and memorable moment. We also need to mention Dark Akarenger from Ninja vs. Tokuger the movie. Unlike most of the Reds we've talked about so far, Dark Akarenger was actually an evil copy created by Dark Dr. Maburo after Maburo steals the Akarenger powers and twists them into something much darker. Dark Akarenger was an interesting mirror of Takaharu that showed us what an evil Akarenger would look like. He had the skills and presence of the real Akared, but with a dark twist. Although he was only around for a short time, he was super memorable and definitely worth mentioning.
Line fire red! Lock in! Line fire flame strike! Final attack! Yeah!
Next up is Brody Romero, the Ninja Steel Red Ranger from Power Rangers Ninja Steel. Brody grew up on a farm where he trained to be a ninja alongside his father and his older brother Aiden. But when the Ninja Nexus Prism landed on their property, the villain Galvanex attacked, and Brody was captured. For years, Brody was held prisoner aboard Galvanex's Warrior Dome, forced to live far away from Earth while the Prism and the Ninja Power Stars became the center of Galvanex's schemes. Eventually, Brody escaped, returned to Earth, and pulled the Red Ninja Power Star from the Ninja Nexus Prism, becoming the Red Ninja Steel Ranger. His entire childhood was stolen by Galvanex, and his return to Earth was about survival, lost family, and reclaiming the destiny that was stolen from him. He may not be the most complex Red Ranger, but he fit the role as a leader that was trying to overcome his early trauma and reunite his family.
If you're still the Red Ranger,
Then who is that?
Much like in Ninja, Ninja Steel also had a brief triple Red Ranger moment with Brody, Dane, and Mick. During the final battle against Galvanex, Brody destroyed the Red Ninja Power Star to keep it from falling into Galvanex's hands. But instead of just losing the power, the broken star reforms into 3 separate Red Ninja Power Stars, allowing Brody, his father Dane, and Mick to all become Red Rangers at the same time.
Hello, boys.
Dad.
This moment's worth mentioning because it gives Ninja Steel its own version of the multiple Reds at once idea, and it was cool to see them standing together. Next up is Yamato Kazakiri, who becomes Zhuo Eagle from Zhuoger. He was a zoologist with a love for animals and all living things. As a child, he was rescued during a storm by a mysterious eagle Xiuman. and years later he ended up in Zhuland, where he met the Zhumans who would eventually become his teammates. After returning to Earth and seeing the Death Galians attack, he became Zhuo Eagle and fought alongside the Zhumans. He isn't a Zhuman himself, but his whole character is built around understanding animals and helping connect the human world with Zhuland. That makes him feel like the emotional link between the two worlds. He can manifest eagle wings, giving him a fast aerial fighting style, and later he gains additional forms, giving him multiple animal themes with tons of versatility. His eagle theme connects him back to earlier bird-themed Reds like Red Hawk, but his ability to shift into other animal forms makes him feel more modern and flexible. He represents Red as the protector of all living things, a zoologist, a bridge between worlds, and a hero whose strength comes from his empathy as much as his combat ability. Next up is Lucky, better known as Shishi Red from Kyuranger. Lucky had unbelievable luck and an insane amount of optimism. At first, he seemed like a random wanderer from space who stumbled into the fight against dark matter. But as the show goes on, we learn that his story is much bigger than that. He's eventually revealed to be a descendant of Orion, one of the legendary warriors connected to the history of the Kyurangers. After being chosen by the Shishi Kyutama, Lucky becomes Shishi Red and joins the fight to free the universe from Don Armage. As a character, Lucky's loud and energetic. He has a constant belief that things will work out if he keeps pushing forward. That can make him seem reckless or even annoying at first, but it also becomes his greatest strength. With Shishi Red Orion, he also gets one of the most visually dramatic Red Ranger power-ups of the modern era. Lucky was a Red Ranger on a cosmic scale, loud and big enough to stand at the center of an entire universe. Kyuranger also featured another Red Ranger with Tsurugi Otori, better known as Ho-Oh Soldier. Tsurugi was a legendary warrior from centuries before the main story, and one of the most important figures in the history of the Kyuranger universe. He was the first human to travel into space, he discovered the whole Kyutama, became immortal, and eventually became the first president of the Space Federation. When dark matter rose to destroy everything he had built, Tsurugi helped found the Kyurangers and fought alongside Orion in the original battle against Don Armage. In the present day, he reawakens and returns as Ho-Oh Soldier. Tsurugi was confident and dramatic. He constantly talks like someone who knows his own importance, but underneath all that ego, he's also carrying the burden of a long life and a war that started centuries before Lucky and the others were even born. His Phoenix theme fits that perfectly, because his whole character is built around revival, rebirth, and returning from history to fight one more time.
Hi, I'm Jason. It's my first time here. It's exciting. And you must be the bully of detention.
Next up is Jason Scott from the 2017 Power Rangers reboot movie. This version of Jason is a reimagining of the classic Red Ranger, but instead of being introduced as the clean-cut martial arts leader from the original show, he starts off as a disgraced high school football star in Angel Grove. After pulling a prank that ruins his future in football and gets him sentenced to weekend detention, Jason crosses paths with Billy, Kimberly, Zach, and Trini. Eventually, Jason bonds to the Red Power Coin and becomes the team's Red Ranger. The 2017 movie took the character of Jason and made him more flawed from the beginning. The original Jason was already a natural leader right from the start, but this version has to rebuild himself before he can truly lead anyone. He's athletic and brave, but he's also angry, self-destructive, and stuck dealing with the consequences of throwing away the life that everyone expected him to have. As a character, Jason is still the center of the team, but the movie puts more emphasis on him learning to connect with the other Rangers. He has to learn how to take responsibility, stop running from his mistakes, and care about the people around him. That makes his leadership feel more like an arc than a default trait. He eventually overcomes his flaws, resulting in a triumphant story that felt satisfying. Our next Ranger is Kairi Yano, Lupin Red from Lupin Ranger vs. Pat Ranger. He was one of the Lupin Rangers, a group of phantom thieves trying to recover the Lupin collection. Kairi joined the fight after his older brother was seemingly killed, and like the other Lupin Rangers, he believed that obtaining the Lupin collection could help bring back the person he had lost. As Lupin Red, he operates outside the law, stealing dangerous artifacts before the Gangler or the police can get to them. That immediately makes him feel a lot different from most Sentai Reds. Kairi is playful and sarcastic, but underneath that, he's deeply traumatized by the loss of his brother. That pain is what drives him, and it creates one of the strongest contrasts in the season. He challenges what a Red Ranger can be with one of the most unique and interesting setups in the entire franchise. Of course, Lupin Ranger vs. Pat Ranger also featured another Red Ranger with Keiichiro Asuka, or Pat Ren Ichigo. Keiichiro was an officer of the Global Special Police Organization, or GSPO, assigned to fight the Gangler and recover the stolen Lupin collection. Alongside Sakuya and Tsukasa, he became one of the Pat Rangers, transforming into Pat Ren Ichigo and serving as the leader of the police side of the season. He gives the season a completely different version of Red than Lupin Red does. Kairi is an outlaw, working in secret and breaking the law to save the person he lost, while Keiichiro is more official, fighting in public under the authority of the police. He believes in justice, duty, and protecting people through the law, which puts him directly at odds with the Lupin Rangers, even though both teams are fighting the same enemy. Keiichiro represents Red as public duty, with uncompromising justice, and when you place him next to Kairi, the season gives us two completely different Red Rangers standing on opposite sides of the same war. Next up is Ko, or Ryuso Red, from Ryusoldier. He was a young knight from the Ryuso tribe, a hidden group of warriors who had protected Earth since the age of the dinosaurs. When the Drudon came back to reclaim Earth, Ko became Ryuso Red and led the Ryusoldiers into battle. He's a dinosaur knight, combining the familiar Dino Red Ranger with swords, armor, ancient tribes, and fantasy-style warrior mythology. That gives him a slightly different flavor from Tyranno Ranger, Aba Red, or Kyoryu Red, even though they all share a similar DNA. After experimental themes like trains, outer space, and two rival teams, Ryusoldier brought the franchise back to a dinosaur theme with Ko as the Red Ranger. But by adding a knight motif, he still feels like his own version of the archetype. He represented Red in a way that was familiar, heroic, and built from one of Sentai's most iconic recurring themes.
I'm Zato.
Next we look at Zato, the Dino Fury Red Ranger from Power Rangers Dino Fury. Zato was a Ravkonian knight who fought the Sporix beast 65 million years ago. Alongside a team of ancient Ravkonian warriors, he came to Earth and was granted ranger powers by the Morphin Masters, becoming the original Dino Fury Red Ranger. But after the ancient battle against the Sporix, most of his team was lost, and Zato went into stasis to keep the captured Sporix from being unleashed again. In the present day, he awakens and eventually leads a new team of Rangers against the Sporix beasts and the threats connected to Ravkon's past. He wasn't just a normal teenager, but an ancient warrior from another planet, waking up millions of years after his original team was destroyed. That gives him a much heavier backstory than a lot of the other Red Rangers, since he's carrying the weight of a war that started long before the modern team was even born. Dino Fury wasn't just another dinosaur season, it tied the Red Ranger powers to the Morphin Masters, Ravkon, the Sporix, and a much larger cosmic history. Zato stands at the center of that as an ancient Red Ranger leading a modern team, almost like a mentor and main Red at the same time. Next up is Juru Atsuda, who becomes Kirame Red, from Kiramager. Juru was a high school student with a huge imagination and a love for drawing. At first, he seems like the least obvious person to become the Red Ranger, especially compared to the rest of the Kiramagers. But when Princess Mabushina comes to Earth, searching for warriors to fight the Jotunheim Empire, Juru is chosen by the Red Kirame Stone. From there, he becomes Kirame Red and is eventually recognized as the leader of the team, even though he's the newest and youngest member.
Kirame, go!
His biggest strength isn't just bravery or fighting ability, it's imagination. Because of his ability to visualize ideas so clearly, Juru can help reshape the Kirame stones into the Kirame machine, basically turning his drawings and creative vision into real weapons and machines. Juru is kind and sometimes unsure of himself, especially early on. He doesn't come in acting like the obvious leader, but that's what makes him stand out. His leadership comes from empathy and creativity, inspiring people to see possibilities they might not have seen on their own. Next up is Zenkai Juren from Zenkaiger. He was a Kikinoid from a parallel world called Kikaitopia. After Kaito gained the power to become Zenkaiser, Juren became the first Kikinoid to join him, using the power of the Zyuranger-based Sentai gear to transform into Zenkai Juren. From there, he fought alongside Kaito, Gaon, Majin, and Vroon to free the world sealed away by Toji Tendo. Zenkai Juren completely breaks the usual Red Ranger setup. He's not the leader of the team. That role belongs to Kaito as Zenkaiser. Juren is bold, loud, energetic, and he loves parties and being the center of attention. He has a big personality that makes him feel different from the serious Red Rangers of the past. His design and powers are also a direct tribute to Zyuranger, with his dinosaur mecha body clearly styled after Daijujin. Zenkaiger completely rethought what a Sentai team could be. Instead of a normal human team with Red at the front, we get one human leader and 4 Kikinoid teammates, each inspired by a past Sentai mecha. Juren showed that Red doesn't always have to be the face of the show anymore, but he could be entertaining nonetheless. Next up is Taro Mamoi, also known as Don Momotaro from Don Brothers. Taro was found as a baby inside a peach-shaped capsule by Jin Momoi, who raised him as his son. Years later, Taro became Don Momotaro, fighting alongside the other Don Brothers in a story loosely based on the Japanese folktale of Momotaro. His charisma was off the charts and he could easily steal the scene at any time. He was unable to lie, and it made for some hilariously awkward moments that gave the show a lot of character. He was absurdly powerful, with god-tier speed and strength, and he was also nearly omnipotent, arriving out of thin air and existing outside of normal reality. He could also use the powers of past Sentais with his Avataro gears. Don Brothers was one of the most unique Sentai seasons ever, and Taro was one of the clearest examples of that. He says exactly what he thinks, even when it comes off as harsh or socially awkward. He has powerful and creative abilities, and he's one of the most unconventional Reds in modern Sentai. Next up is Gira Husty, better known as Kuwagata Oger from King Oger. Gira starts off the series as a normal guy living in Shugodam, the strongest of the 5 kingdoms of Chikyu. At first, he seems pretty unremarkable. He cares a lot about children and the people around him, but when Shugodam's king Rakules refuses to properly protect the kingdom from the Bugnarok, Gira steals the Oger caliber, bonds with god Kuwagata, and becomes Kuwagata Oger. Kuwagata Oger took the Red Ranger archetype and dropped it into a full royal fantasy setting. He's the team leader in a story about kings, kingdoms, political power, and what it actually means to rule. And even though he starts as someone fighting against the king, Gira is eventually revealed to be Rakule's younger brother and a forgotten member of Shugodam's royal family. Gira is dramatic and extremely theatrical. One of his funniest traits is that he acts like an over-the-top villain in public, calling himself the evil king even though he's usually doing it to protect people or hide his real feelings. That makes him really unique for a Red Ranger, because he's heroic at heart, but his whole persona is built around playing the villain when it suits him. King Oger pushed Super Sentai into one of its biggest fantasy worlds ever. Gira stands at the center of that, with an interesting story that sees him trying to become the kind of king that his world needs. Now we look at Daigoro Kiryu, who becomes King Kyoryu Red. He's the future son of Daigo Kiryu and Amy Yuzuki, Kyoryu Red and Pink, making him a big part of Kyoryuger's legacy. He comes from a future timeline connected to the crossover between King Oger and Kyoryuger, where the history of both series crashed into each other. Daigo was already known as King, so having his son become King Kyoryu Red makes the whole thing feel like a passing of the torch. Daigoro had a similar energy and personality to Daigo, but he also feels distinct since he appears in the King Oger era, where Sentai was doing some cool things that hadn't been seen before. King Kyoryu Red showed how Sentai can revisit the legacy of a past Red Ranger without just bringing back the original hero. Instead of only relying on Daigo, King Oger gave us Daigoro, a son carrying the Kyoryu Red legacy into a new generation.
If the morphing grid chose you to be the Red Ranger, it means it's reacting to something within you.
Zeto's gonna be so proud of you.
Next we look at Amelia Jones, who becomes the Cosmic Fury Red Ranger in Power Rangers Cosmic Fury. Amelia was the Dino Fury Pink Ranger, working as a journalist before being pulled into the fight at Dino Henge. Over time, her story became much bigger when she discovered that she was actually Ravkonian, and that her parents were Tarek and Santara, better known for most of Dino Fury as Void Knight and Void Queen. After Zeto's role changed going into Cosmic Fury, Amelia stepped up as the new Red Ranger and leader of the team. She was the first full-time female Red Ranger in the franchise, which makes her a huge evolution for the Red Ranger archetype. Power Rangers had female Reds before in special cases, like Charlie from A-Squad and Lauren from Samurai, but Amelia is the first female to be the main Red Ranger of the team. She's curious, brave, and extremely driven. Her background as a journalist gives her a natural instinct to investigate mysteries and find out the truth, and her Ravkonian lineage ties her directly into the larger mythology of Dino Fury and Cosmic Fury. She's also different from most other dinosaur-themed Red Rangers because instead of being themed around a T-Rex, she's based on the Ankylosaurus. Amelia was a unique and interesting Red Ranger with tons of charm and personality. Her story was well thought out, and she became one of the most memorable Reds within the history of Power Rangers. Next up is Taya Hando, better known as Boon Red from Boon Boomjer. Taya worked as a courier, taking on risky jobs and transporting whatever needed to be delivered. But underneath that simple job description, Taya was also secretly wealthy and highly skilled with machines, partnering with Boon Boom to develop the Boon Boomjer arsenal and form the Boon Boomjers. Taya loves cars and taking risks, and he grabs life by the horns. He's highly competitive, and when things get dangerous, he would rather take the risk than sit around waiting for things to play out. Boon Boomjer brought Sentai back to a vehicle theme, but with a different flavor from Car Ranger, Turbo Ranger, or Go-Onger. Taya isn't just a racing-themed Red, he took control of his own destiny and never stopped driving forward. Next up is Hoeru Tono, or Goju Wolf, from Gojuger. Hoeru was an outcast that initially comes off as foul-mouthed and antisocial, but underneath all of that, he's still a good person at heart, eventually transforming into Goju Wolf and stepping into the fight as the Red Ranger of the Gojugers. Goju Wolf brought the Red Ranger archetype into one of Sentai's biggest anniversary moments, and the conclusion of the franchise as we know it. Instead of giving us a clean-cut, traditional Red Ranger, the show gives us a lone wolf that was pretty rough around the edges. He's isolated, feral, and hard to approach, but still capable of loyalty and heroism when it matters. He didn't look like a perfect leader on paper, but as the Red Ranger of Sentai's 50th anniversary season, Goju Wolf showed that even after all this time, the franchise still found new ways to define what a Red Ranger could be, all the way up until the end. So there you have it, every Red Ranger ever. Let me know which one is your favorite in the comments. If you want to see more Toku content, be sure to transform into a subscriber by hitting that subscribe button. And if you enjoyed the video, it would mean a lot to me if you smack the shit out of that like button. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.